Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Happy Wednesday.
Good morning.
Halfway through the week. We're making it to the end almost.
Yep. I see some favorite folks. Thanks for coming. We're going to be a little interactive today, fair warning.
So we have just wait like one more minute for
So I'll
people
bring
to
up the
start getting in.
title card while we're chilling.
Yeah.
People know they're in the right place.
Right. So we'll get started. As many of you already know, like if you've been to one of our webinars in the past, my name's Sonia and Russell will be presenting today. This is a little bit of a smaller group than our usual. So we're gonna, and due to the topic, we're gonna open it up a little bit more. So please feel free to unmute yourselves, get on camera. It's gonna be more of a round table type feel. Because with business continuity, we wanted to make it more interactive and to have you guys participate. I think it's better and easier to learn that way when we do it. So obviously you don't have to if you're working in the background. I totally understand that as well. But I know that in the past, usually we just use the chat for our main form of communication. But for this one, if, like I said, if you want to unmute, get on camera, please feel free. The chat, I will be monitoring that as well. So feel free to use that if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Russell, and we're going to start learning about BCDR.
All right. Thank you, Sonia, for the great introduction. And thanks, everybody, for taking the time today. I see a bunch of familiar names, so very happy to have some friends along today, too. Like Sonia said, we're going to be a little interactive today, so I hope you don't mind participating. I've got some scenarios I can run through from my side as well. So what we want to do today is look at what business continuity disaster recovery is. We're going to define that. We're going to define why it's important. We're also going to talk about you're likely doing some of these things now, but you may not be calling it that. So most folks are not starting at square one here. You're going to be able to build on things you've already implemented. We're going to talk about where we see organizations stumbling when it comes to implementing these things, how we solve those solutions with our approach at Advantage. We're going to do some real world examples from some of the verticals that we work with a lot, nonprofits, grants, foundations, manufacturing, property management. I see some are medical clients on there, so we've got some good HIPAA type examples for you too. We're going to show you how to get started, and we have a takeaway packet for you today too, which Sonia and I will be sending out after the webinar today to help you get started with this stuff. And really, it's not as complex or as expensive as you might think. So as we go through, again, like Sonia said, speak up. If you're shy, type your question in. We do have time for questions. We'll be taking them throughout the presentation today. All right. So let's define some terms here. So business continuity is the first one. And the kind of formal definition is it's a strategy and the plan to keep your critical business processes, functions, workflows running, or to quickly resume them during and after a disruption. The short definition of this is the tech there? From our perspective anyway, is the tech there when you need it? Can you keep working? Can your organization fulfill its primary business functions, its client support functions, etc.? And we talk about this more than disaster recovery in IT company land. We used to be 10 years ago very focused on disaster recovery because we talked about things like backups and we were in that server ecosystem and here's your physical server, here's the physical backup. And so we focused a lot on those kinds of things. Nowadays, as we work up to 24 hours a day, in some cases, we work at all times of the day. We work in all parts of the country. We're working remotely and on site. We have shifted much more to focusing on keeping the business running in all types of situations, not just disasters. So we've expanded the realm And so I'd say business continuity is the top one. That's our goal, is to keep things functioning. Disaster recovery supports that, and these other things do too as well. So a couple other definitions we want to throw out. Um, Disaster recovery, like I said, it's a backup appliance. It's the technology side of business continuity. Recovery time objective, that is how long that critical workflow or system can be down before there are serious disruptions and you can no longer conduct business. Recovery point is how much data loss can you allow. So if we're looking at that kind of server and backup situation, how frequently do your backups run? How many do you need to retain? If there's a gap, let's say you get ransomware at 2 o'clock, you might not have run a backup since 9 in the morning. Is that too much data loss if you lose that time from 9 to 2? That's what a recovery point objective is. And lastly is incident response. So incident response is the moment of crisis and what you do in that moment. So when the fire breaks out, when somebody pulls that alarm, are you running around in a panic, or are you going to your incident response plan, hint, hint, and following the procedures that is already laid out? So that's a wonderful thing to have, and we're going to talk about why that supports your business continuity plan. So I'm going to ask a little poll here. I want people to speak up. Feel free to pop that number answer in the chat. But does your organization have a BCDR plan? And these are the kind of responses that we see when I'm talking with folks. And so a lot of folks don't have one. A lot of folks do, but either they haven't updated it recently or they haven't tested it. So go ahead and pop your answer in the chat where you think your organization stands right now. You could just pop the number in. All right. Ooh, we got a good answer. We got a gold star here from Scott. That's cool. All right. We've got another good answer here. We've discussed the need for one. All right. So that's what we run into a lot. So a lot of people are aware this is something they should have, and they know they need to do it. They're not sure where to start. They're not sure how to go about it. And that's where we're going to help you out today. Reasons why I hear from people why they haven't done this is it's too complex. They don't know where to start, or they're worried it's going to be very expensive. And I think where that worry comes from is a lot of times it is a little bit of legacy information. It's a little bit of the past. So if we go back to 10 years ago and server and backup, or do you need two servers? Sometimes BCDR 10 years ago was literally twice the expense. If we need no downtime, we need to have two servers. I need to buy two boxes from Microsoft, two sets of Windows license, two of everything. And that's the only way I could do that. The nice thing is the cloud has changed a lot of things in the tech side. And so we're going to see things get better. So yeah, that's that old school technology. In other words, what we learned 10 years ago isn't the case anymore. It's a lot easier and cheaper, faster to do. Too expensive, too time consuming. Again, are we having to duplicate everything? Siloed thinking, and we're going to explore this a little bit, but thinking of each process or each piece of technology in and of itself and not going beyond that single piece of technology. And we're going to show some examples of that today. This is very important. The RTO and the RPO are your finish lines. They're your milestones. That's the goal you're trying to hit. So the RTO is how long can that workflow be down and before we have issues. If you don't know that and you don't set that, you can't have a successful plan. Your plan doesn't fit your needs, which is to keep your company operating. They don't test. So it's great if we have a plan, but we need to test it. That's true elsewhere in life. And this is very interesting. This is one of the best ways that organizations can reduce the cost of their BCDR plan is think of manual or alternative workflows. We're going to look at a couple of these today. We're also going to look at One of the things that has come out, the flip side of the old school thinking is nowadays people do a lot of stuff with cloud vendors, Microsoft, Barracuda, Carestream, various Action Flow, various providers. And those providers tell you, hey, we have great uptime. And a lot of our clients go, fantastic, I don't need to think about this anymore and move on. You do, because that outage still affects your staff, still affects your company's ability to do business. So the flip side of the cloud is still need to account for these things. And lastly, and this is going to be our main theme today, companies that start with technology aren't successful. And I'm an IT guy telling you this. So where we start at Advantage is with priorities, people, and processes. If we start with the technology, we're worried about just that piece. We're not worried about the outcomes, what we're trying to get out of that technology. And it's a tool, right? So we want to focus on the workflows, the people, the priorities, the processes that your organization needs to carry out. So let's go. So how do we do stuff at Advantage? And then we'll get to some interactive components here. The first thing is we need to work with our clients. We know technology, we know dependencies, we know things like Microsoft. You know your organization, you know your business better than we do. And what we want to build around is a BCDR plan that supports your business, not one that supports your technology. That happens if we are supporting your business. But the goal is to support your business. That's our objective. That's our outcome. And we work with you to do that. We're going to create a critical workflow map. And this is going to be our next exercise here. So that is, what are the key things that need to happen in your organization to keep the lights on, to keep you serving your clients, your patients, etc. So what are things that need to happen every day, every hour, every week, every month? And that feeds into your RTO and your RPO. We also want to align with any cyber insurance or any other carriers you have. So this is an interesting thing. We are seeing our clients being asked to provide documentation on their BCDR plans. So think about it this way. If you are a manufacturer and you have clients buying your parts, they are just in time, most likely. So what they're getting from you feeds directly into what they're able to deliver to their clients. They need to be assured that they're going to get those deliveries from you. So what they're starting to do now, and we're helping our clients respond to these requests, is coming back and saying, hey, before we buy from you, manufacturer, show us your BCDR plan so we can be assured that you're able to deliver the goods on time. We know that your operations aren't going to be too negatively impacted. We need to plan around that before we buy from you. Vendor DR assurances. So we work with your vendors. Just because you don't control the system doesn't mean it won't impact your staff. And we've got a lot of good examples of that. So look at CrowdStrike or Cloudflare outages in the last couple of years. We've had issues where this is a massive third-party DNS service. It affects billions of people, millions of companies. You or I have no ability to manage those back-end systems. We cannot adjust how often they're doing their backups or how that environment is defined. But if there's an outage, it could still impact our staff. So we need to account for that type of outage in our planning. And what do we do as a backup option? Just because you don't control it doesn't mean you can't feel it. It's like getting hit by lightning, right? We want to identify gaps and deficiencies. So until you actually go through and write your plan, there's stuff you're going to miss. Putting it all out, thinking through these exercises lets you identify those gaps. We work with our clients on that. We create what's called a run book. So my colleague Kevin, our director of services, has a template for this that we use with clients. You can also create your own if you're a smaller, more simple organization. But this is basically, here's what happens when these types of issues or outages happen. Here's what we do. And that doesn't need to be rocket science. Sometimes it is that third-party service and you don't have a lot of control over it. It may be just informing your team of the outage. We test our run book. We do exercise, what we call tabletops. These are a lot of fun. Kevin and I and Phil sit down with the client and we create a scenario. Here's an outage with their team. What do you do? Everybody go to the playbook. Let's test it out. Let's pretend we're actually down. What are we going to do? And then that allows us to identify any gaps. And we do those in plan refreshes. Technology changes. It's moving so fast right now. You get a different vendor. You want to update your BCDR plan. So if you act enough, let's go on to one now. So this is where we start. Or actually, this is probably step two. Where we start is, what are the most essential workflows in your organization? And you can think about these. You probably know them. I'm going to ask you to think about that for just a second here. So what is something that needs to happen every day for your company to do its business or your organization to do its business? So what's a workflow that needs to be happening, or why are you even opening the door that morning? So think about that in your head a second. And what I want to do right now is, can I get a volunteer? And I've got an example if everybody's shy, but I'd love to get a volunteer. Give me a workflow from your company that needs to happen every day.
A
Make
quiet
me
group
call on
today.
anybody. Don't make me call. Don't be shy. It's surgical cases. All right. So Franca, and you can unmute yourself, Franca, if you want to talk. Um, So let's work through this. All right. So surgical cases. So those happen every day. Um, what business outcome does this workflow support? Why is it essential? So I'm going to guess that, that keeps your patients healthy. It's how you pay the bills too. Those are billable services, right? So that's pretty essential. Trigger event. What starts this workflow? Frank is typing. So what starts this workflow, Franca? So does somebody make an appointment? Do they call in? Do they email in typically? Could it be both? Are there other ways that they make appointments? Oh, Sonia, Franca can't unmute.
I
Do you
know, and I
know?
don't know why, because I've turned everything
Oh,
off. She
wait,
should.
Franca, try now. Try unmuting yourself. I think you should be able to. Apparently, I had to allow your mic. All right, don't worry about it. All right, well, I'm gonna walk through and we're gonna type out a little bit here. And I'm making sure everybody's mic is now allowed, so you should be able to do that if you want. All right. So Franca, email, phone, how do they come in? Could it be through the website? So patients usually call in and make, so that's the normal workflow, right? So now we're looking at it. Now, if I looked at technology, first, let's say I started there. If I looked at technology, it would be, well, the phone is probably the most important technology there. But if I'm just looking at the phone system, I may rule out other ways that patients can make appointments or reach me. Um, let's look at, if I started with, for example, a phone on our side at Advantage when we're talking about receiving support tickets. If I'm just looking at email or just looking at phone to start with, I'm going to say, well, if the email's down, we need a backup for our email. Do we need an alternate email address? Do we need an alternate email server? When we go through this exercise at Advantage, we identified and made sure that email was only one way that our clients have to open a ticket with us. They can also call in, right? So we said, that's a good example of a business continuity workflow. If email's down, people can call in. We also have additional email protections. If Microsoft email is down, we can check our emails in Barracuda. So what we're doing there is both a technological alternate workflow. We can check our emails in Barracuda. we're also doing a more people or an alternate workflow where folks can call in. So we could set up an announcement call in, or when people see that bounce back, they can go to our website and look up the number. They can message us in chat on the website. So one of the takeaways there, and Frank, let's see what Franca says on the day of the appointment is the issue because we record all the data and need the x-rays. We need access to the records. Without the x-rays, we can't perform the surgeries. Ah, now we're getting to a different workflow a little bit. So we have the appointment making workflow. Now we have the actual pulling up and the x-rays and being ready for that surgery. So that's very critical, right? There's some workarounds in the appointment workflow in Franca's case, but on the x-rays, that's hard. That's more difficult. So there are a couple ways that we could do this. So first off is the RTO target. We want to make sure that we're adjusting our solution to hit our targets. So Franca, how long could that X-ray system be down before you say we can't do surgeries today? Is that half an hour? Is it an hour? Is it half a day? Um, do you know that answer yet? Right? So that's something you want to figure out. So let's say, for instance, um, the system can be down for an hour. That's a pretty tight timeline. And I've seen clients approach this type of issue in different ways. There is the technological side where you can say, well, we need to, rather than say a server in our office, we want to have a server in the Microsoft cloud. And because it's going to have redundancies, and we'll look at that in a moment. We could also say, as an alternate workflow, that may be cheaper, but takes us more time. The day before, we could print out or download a copy of all the x-rays we needed for the following day. So in that case, if we're downloading that from the cloud vendor, that's going to take my staff more time, but I have those things if I needed. And this is the kind of things that you want to start evaluating is there are different ways to hit that business continuity target that have different costs, internal costs or external costs. And this is one of the ways we come in and help people. We also want to have manual fallback steps. And that would be that example of like printing things out the day before. That's a little bit of a manual fallback step. We have roles, responsibilities, who needs to implement the plan, who is doing what, which staff might be printing out those x-rays, and what the communications requirements are. Do we need to tell patients to come half an hour early because it's taking us longer to pull records? So all these things should be built into your plan. But if you start off with, we just need x-rays on our system, that's not your end goal. Your end goal is to be able to perform the surgery for your patients. Then you start asking, okay, how do I get those x-rays? You're not looking at that one workflow, you're looking at different options. What we see in, and I'm going to hop ahead a little bit to this slide here. So an example here is we might go and identify, hey, we need a vendor that has recovery zones. That's a technological way to solve this issue. So if this is Microsoft. If one site is down, a data center is down, they fail their clients over to one of the 2 or 3 other data centers in that region, and you're reconnected within a minute. Costs a little more money, but it's a very fast business continuity and recovery option. Questions about workflow maps before we move on? So generally, the shorter your RTO window, the faster you need to be up and running. Traditionally, that would cost more. And the quickest time, basically instant failover, would cost the most. Again, the cloud has changed a lot of this calculation. To set up that kind of Microsoft system is not that expensive compared to a server these days. Cloud prices have fallen, and so we can take advantage of all these good things. I'm going to give you a little example from one of our verticals right now, nonprofit grants foundations. So foundations run on trust and timetables, and a lot of their work isn't the same as a doctor's office, right? It may not be as sensitive as we need this in the next hour. If you need to get back to that grant, it may be, well, we can allow a 24-hour outage on that grants management system before we're impacted. So again, identifying what your goal is very important here because that affects all the planning you do hitting that goal. What they have is deadlines, board meetings, disbursements, again, a little slower than we'd see maybe in manufacturing or medical fields. But they have very high privacy requirements, very reputational requirements. So they're worried about those kinds of issues in business continuity. They also tend to use almost exclusively third-party software. So very few of the nonprofits we work with have a server in their office. Have a rack of equipment. Almost everything they're doing is hosted email, hosted grants management software, hosted everything they do. So they don't have direct control over any of the tools they use, which is a kind of profound and a little bit alarming statement when you first look at it, right? So here's an organization, everything they do is run by somebody else and they're using that software as a service or SaaS, as we like to say. Um, However, again, like we heard with CrowdStrike, one of those services goes down, their operations are still impacted. So grants foundations, a lot of their BCDR work, or if you are a cloud-based organization, a lot of that BCDR work involves, again, going back to that workflow map, detailing your workflows, and then figuring out which vendors interact with which workflow and what happens if that vendor is offline. So where we come in is then we go back and say, okay, vendors, show us your documentation. What is your BCDR plan? When do you expect to have services restored? How long could we see an outage for? And then we have to build that into our plan. So we're going to take what information they give us. If they say, hey, here's a situation, we could have a 4-hour outage in this situation, or they've got past data that shows we're down for approximately, like Microsoft Azure is half an hour a year. We build that into our calculations. We know that that's what we should expect in a normal year, half an hour, and we can work around that. So a lot of what we do here is just because you don't own it doesn't mean you can't feel it. That's the big takeaway. And so when we're meeting with grants foundations, we'll sit there and say, or any third-party software company, right, that you're doing business with, we want to see their plan. If their plan isn't good enough, that's when some interesting stuff happens. Maybe that is the cue to look for a different vendor. And that's happened before, where we asked to see a vendor's BCDR plan, and there were huge gaps in it. There were huge pieces of missing information. They could not tell us how they were backing up our client's data. So that was a cue to say, hey, client, we probably want to look at a new vendor for this service. We're not confident anymore. This is a cue to you. If you're selling to people too, clients are going to start wanting to see this. They want to make sure that you're able to deliver for them. So in this case here, we worked with a client recently. They used third-party software that was hosted by the vendor. The vendor's hosting is kind of something you get the feeling of cloud hosting, something they feel they have to do. They're not excited about doing it. And they didn't have the redundancy. We were having downtime and outages. So we found out that, hey, we can move this software to the Microsoft cloud. In that case, we've got a cluster of 3 different data centers. If one goes down, the others pick up, and our client keeps working. So that was, we went through the workflow, we identified a gap. It was a system they didn't control. It would impact them. We can still do things to fix it or build around that system. Another good example I have from the medical field is one of our, in 2024, there was the big pharmacy outage and prescription outage, if you all remember that. I know a couple people here definitely do. So everybody's electronic cloud-based pharmacy subscription systems went down. We have a client, they're a 4-office medical group. They had a BCDR plan. They were ready for this. Guess what it was? In every closet in the office, they keep a stack of paper prescription pads. And when the system went down, they went to their plan, open it up, grab the pads from the closet, start writing paper prescriptions like we used to. And those were able to get filled. They were able to get them to their clients, take them to the pharmacy. That's a great example of identifying a weakness from an external vendor, and the fix there was not expensive. They needed to buy some prescription pads. Doesn't have to be complex, just has to work in that time period until normal services are restored. That's another thing to note too. A lot of these workarounds may not be as efficient as what you do every day. If they're good enough to keep things running till service is restored, they may be good enough. Let's take a look at manufacturing. A slightly different situation here. So manufacturers, as opposed to the nonprofits who tend to be all cloud-based, almost all of our manufacturers have a mix of cloud and on-site systems. So they have servers, right? And they also have what we call the OT, or the operational technology. That would be the machines on the factory floor that tend to be internet and computer connected, are managed by a separate vendor, but they do interface with the rest of the network. And so manufacturers have two things to worry about when it comes to their BCDR tech. And again, if you get focused on one, you miss the interconnects. So we have had manufacturers that um, they're very good, in my experience, at looking at the OT, at looking at the machines on their floor. They worry about the machines on the floor a lot. They have very good support contracts with those vendors because they know that if that machine stops working, they can immediately measure the business impact to their operations. What happens when that assembly line stops? And here's how much money it costs us. So they're very, very good at that. They tend to be weaker on the information technology. So does that machine depend on an internet connection to upload the plans or the CAD diagrams that you need? Does that machine depend on an internet connection to get the software from the vendor, or for the vendor to be able to remote in and support it? That's a great example. We had an issue at a manufacturer a couple of years ago where a machine was having problems. It kept going offline. The previous IT company had never installed a permanent data connection for that equipment. Instead, it was a cable that they would move around to whatever machine was having problem, plug it in, call the manufacturer of the machine, and then work on the issue. Every time this happened, it was, where's the cable? Where do we need to plug it into? Which machine do we need to yank it out of and pull it in? And it burned at least half an hour every time this happened. We came in and said, hey, we have a serious workflow issue here. It's very easy to correct. Let's run some additional cables. Let's get every machine connected all the time. That way, when you have a problem, when there's a line on that, when there's an issue with your OT, the manufacturer can call in 5 minutes and support you instead of taking 35 minutes to find a cable, connect it in, and then work with the manufacturer. And that 30 minutes was money. So that's a great example of that. We also look at ERP and accounting systems, and how these things connect. Again, if we're looking at the workflow, not the piece of technology, we look at how the systems are connected. We understand that that machine on the shop floor is connected to the server, is connected to the internet, is connected to the remote manufacturer supporting it. Whereas we just looked at, let's just look at your internet connection, or let's just look at your network, we might not see the interoperability of these things. And all of these for manufacturers, it's supply chains, it's delivery impacts, it's weather events. That's a great business continuity thing, which isn't a ransomware attack. It isn't your internet going down. But hey, we had an ice/snowstorm in Maryland 2 weeks ago. Still melting, but most of our clients, people couldn't get to work for a day or two when that happened. Monday morning, people were remote. So that's a great example of that's a fairly normal event. It's not a disaster. It's not unexpected. It is something that impacts your business continuity. So for one of our manufacturers, we have a remote server so people can connect in from home, access the ERP, do their business. So now, a little interactive again. Here's a simplified diagram from a manufacturer and kind of represents a lot of the ways we work with our manufacturers. And most of our manufacturers have an in-house IT tech, and they're great because they deal with that OT side of things, which we don't as much. And they're the interface in the OT and the IT. So we love our in-house people like Sydney here. They have an on-site server. They have a data server backup. It's a great appliance. We love them. It does an on-site backup and a cloud backup, and we can turn on a copy of the server in both cases. So if the server box crashes, we can bring up a copy of it here in the office, or if there's something like a flood, we literally have had on more than one occasion in a manufacturer a roof leak in the server room. I'm not even kidding. But we were able to bring that server online from the cloud copy, and they were able to keep working. They also use Salesforce as their CRM. They use Microsoft for their email and their documents, and we have a third-party backup for that backup data from the email and SharePoint. So, question for everybody here. Do we have any single points of failure, and what are they? Go ahead and pop it in the chat. There's at least one. There may be more than one. So I want to see what people catch here. And I think you should be able to unmute now. I allowed everybody, but whatever way. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything yet. So guess what the biggest one is. All
I
right.
hear the answer.
Oh yeah. Please, please.
Is it Sydney?
It is. It is. So Sydney's the IT admin. She's the one IT admin. And Sydney's got all the admin credentials. She's got all the passwords. She's got all the access. She's the one that deals with Salesforce and Microsoft. She's the one that deals with the OT vendors on the manufacturing floor. And what happens if, Sydney is on vacation and there's an ice storm and, oh, she's not back for the next week? What do we do if there's an issue, if there's a business continuity thing? So again, because we're looking at the people and our workflows, we're able to expand our view. If we were just looking at Salesforce, we would only focus on this and we wouldn't see that there was a problem in the workflow. So we want to do something about that. So that is, and again, this is not expensive to fix this workflow issue, right? We're not adding tools, we're not adding investment, we're not adding a lot of time. What we need to designate as a backup, we need to make sure that the backup has all the credentials that Sydney does, or the IT partner has all of those. We could act as a backup. We do that in some cases. But basically making sure that things are documented properly, the access is documented, the workflows are popping, and we test it out. So maybe we say, hey, Sydney, you're not part of this tabletop exercises, just the backup crew is. Let's see what happens if you're not there. Can we get things back up and running? So property management, this is an interesting one too. So property managers have we've kind of gone through different sort of levels of how quick a RTO we need, right? Where grants foundations, they might be okay with a 24-hour outage of the key system. Manufacturers are probably going to be okay. It depends on the manufacturer and what the job is, but it might be a few hours. Property management, often it's almost 0 hours because their clients, their tenants, feel the impact of that outage immediately. very often. If that is an HVAC system, if that's building controls, that immediately impacts all of your tenants in the building and they're freaking out. So often property managers have almost zero downtime allowable or as little as possible. And that's an interesting thing. They also do a lot of building automation systems, those HVAC controls, those monitoring systems. And so the interesting for us when we walk through these is we're not looking at just their email. We're not looking at their servers. We're looking at all these other technologies that need to be functioning to support their workflows in business. A good example of this is one of the property managers we work with. They Class A apartment buildings, hundreds of units in a building. When their fire alarm system loses its internet connection, by law, they need to have staff walking through the hallways of the building, I think every 30 minutes, to look for smoke and fires and see if there's an issue. And they need to do this 24/7 until that connection is restored. That means that they need to call people up to do overtime, work extra shifts, pull extra duties. For one of their apartment buildings, this is $12,000 a day if they need to be on what they call this fire watch. So that's a huge business continuity issue, and it could literally put people's lives at risk in this case. So what do we do there? Again, in comparison, that was a pretty low cost fix. Nowadays, these building control systems, fire alarms, allow a cellular failover connection. They didn't used to a few years ago, but the laws have been updated. Not everybody's aware of that yet. We are able to go back and say, hey, laws have been updated. We can add a cellular failover connection. Let's talk with your fire alarm vendor and get that put in. It costs them, I think, something like $50 a month to add that on. It pays for itself instantly. The first time they have an internet outage on their main system and that cellular picks up, they've saved $20,000 or $12,000. So big impacts can only may only need a little investment. So now we're going to do a little tabletop exercise. And I want you to think about this. Okay, so your cloud accounting platform is attacked by state actors. That's like other governments. And we've seen this several times in the last 3 years. There is a possibility of a data breach, right? So your information could have been exposed, your client's information could have been exposed because it's accounting software, so addresses and all that stuff, account numbers. The investigation is still ongoing, so the big company hasn't let you know what the impact is yet. They've temporarily taken the platform offline while they investigate the scope of the breach. This is normal procedure for these big companies too. So they want to make sure they're still not having information or data stolen. If they're at all unsure, they will just shut everything down until they're able to go through it. And at present, there is no ETA for restoration of services. So I want you to think about this a second. And everybody's got an accounting platform. That's why I picked this one. How long can this be down before there's a serious impact to their business? Now it's accounting. For most organizations, it's probably, we're not talking minutes here. We're probably not even talking hours. Go ahead and pop it into chat. How long do you think your accounting platform could be down before it really starts impacting things? Start calling on people. All right, 3 days. That's probably so. Chet said 3 days. That's kind of probably about what I'd expect. Mm-hmm. And that's a good example too. One of the things is, again, because we thought about that RTO, we take different measures into impact if it's 3 days versus 3 hours, right? That's different levels of fixes, workarounds, technologies we need to implement. 3 hours, I'm going to say, okay, we probably need an immediate, redundant accounting system or back end way to do things. 3 days, now we've got some time to plan. We've got time to implement extra measures. Our ticketing system, again, is an example of that. Okay, so there you go. Frank has got a good start. We had something like this last year. We made it 30 plus days. We had to go to paper. That's a great example of one of these failover workflows that you can do. Now, in the moment, though, and this is why the plan is so key, is do you want to be figuring that out now while everybody is like, oh my God, the accounting system is down? Or do you want to figure that out ahead of time? If the accounting system goes down, here's what we do. Then maybe you're starting to go ahead. Maybe you've designed a spreadsheet to keep track of this stuff manually until the accounting system's back up. Or that's your procedure for days 1 through 3, and then you have a different procedure if it goes beyond that. So again, if we're sort of is planning for the worst, that's a lot of what we do in IT these days with cybersecurity is we plan for the worst, or we assume the worst, and then we plan accordingly. So again, that fixed paper doesn't have to be expensive to implement. It's not as efficient, but if it lets you work and gets the job done till that service is restored, that's great. Now, one of the things you do after the fact is you always do a retrospective too. So 30 days is a really long time, right? So I'm sure there is a discussion at the end of that is this the right vendor for us? If they're going to have an outage that long, I don't know that they are. Maybe it's time to look at different vendors. Maybe we want to look and see if we can reduce that window that we're impacted, right? So that's why you come back and update your plans and you do these retrospectives. Okay, open Q&A time before we move on to our wrap up and next steps. And I want to show that guide a little bit too. So any questions anybody has at the moment before we move on to the wrap up? Right. So where do you get started? So first is to build that critical workflow map. And that is identifying the priorities of the business. What are the things that need to happen in order to run? Oh, how long to create a plan? Oh, that's a good question, Franca. We're going to talk about this. So Frank asked how long to create a plan. And it can be short. It can be pretty short to create one. Some of the testing and validation can take longer. We'll walk through this. So start with your critical workflow map. You know your business, you know your organization better than your IT partner, than anybody else. You know what needs to happen. And I really like breaking it down. What needs to happen every day? What needs to happen every week? What needs to happen every month? Usually we don't get into quarter stuff because that can wait. That's priorities, the people. So who is doing these things is very, very vital. You remember Sydney from that example and the processes. So again, if we're looking at the process, we're following the chain of that work through different people and different vendors and different technologies, where if we're just looking at, say, email, we're not going to spot other options. We're not going to spot at what that email connects to. We want to follow the work and look at the outcome we're trying to achieve. We build our RTOs and RPOs based on those. You work typically with your IT department or your managed security and services provider like Advantage to identify if your current technology level lets you meet those objectives. And that's one of the big areas that we come in as Advantage, where you say, okay, you've identified this system can be down for 4 hours. Let's now make sure that everything in this workflow chain lets you hit that goal. If it doesn't, we'll identify it. We'll say, okay, you know what? The way your network is designed right now, we're probably looking at 6 to 8 hours. Do we want to revise that, get that under 4? Great. Here's what we're going to need to add. Here's what we're going to need to invest in to get that under the 4 hours you want. But if that 4 hours saves you thousands of dollars because your manufacturing line isn't down, it's usually very worth it. We implement, and those are the fixes we implement. We create a run book. That is your battle plan. I always like to say the run book is your in case of emergency break glass, but it's for the technology, it's for the network, it's for the processes. So when that pharmacy subscription goes down, people went to the plan and said, okay, grab the paper pads from the closet. That's a great plan to follow. Test your plan. So this is what we do at Advantage with what we call tabletop exercises. And we'll look at that in a second. And then you got to keep your plan updated. Technology moves fast. Your business changes every quarter. So you want to update your plan to reflect those changes. You don't want to go in and open that plan and like, wow, this is the vendor that we used to use 3 years ago. I don't know who to call now that we're having this problem. So here's where we really come in and help. Now, a lot of this stuff you're doing on your own. Again, you know your workflows, your people, your processes better than anybody else. So you're going to do that on your own. And you know the business better. That's you. We come in and supplement with, we have templates for a lot of these things. That's the workflow map and runbook templates. We're going to give you a getting started guide today. So you'll get that in your email. We do a technology alignment review. In other words, do we have the right technologies in place to help you meet those objectives? If not, let's get them aligned. Do we need to update settings? Do we need to look at a different vendor for that to help you hit that 2 hour or 4 hour mark, whatever it is? We also look at what compliance or insurance requirements you may have. We are seeing more of these. So cyber insurance, they want to see that you have secure, isolated, encrypted backups, or the top insurers will not insure you. The ones that are backed by the state of Maryland, in our case, will not insure you unless you have encrypted third-party backups of your data because they don't want to be paying out ransomware payments. So we want to make sure that we've got that tool in if that's a requirement for you. We look at those third-party vendors. So we know what to ask for. We know what we expect to see on the technology side when it comes to how backups are maintained, for instance. And so we'll go to the vendors and say, hey, show us how you're taking care of this stuff for our client. Let's review that information and make sure it's up to par. We do semi-annual plan updates. We also do ongoing advisory, so that's keeping them up to date. We'll advise you of changes. We'll let you know that, hey, we've been doing an on-prem server for several years. I think based on your needs now, we want to look at a cloud solution in Microsoft. Here's why. Here's how we could get there. And this is what it will do for the company. It's going to cut your downtime from X hours a year to half an hour. And so we'll walk through those things. So we have this as part of a add-on plan if you're a managed services client, and that will actually be templates for things like the manual too. So Kevin's got a very nice, rich, in-depth plan to implement. We sit down and work with you and build these things together. Now, if you want to build them yourself, and I'm going to drag this over so we can just take a look at it. You will be getting a copy of this guide, which is really going to run you through, I think, the things to get started. And it's a 10-step guide. It starts with building those workflows and then the systems behind them. So the applications, the people, that's in the ownership and roles, recovery expectations, how long you can be down for. And these are different for different workflows, right? It's not the whole company. It's how long can this particular workflow be down? So manufacturer, shop floor can be down for 2 hours. The accounting system can be down for a day, as an example. Review your backup and recovery capabilities. That falls into the incident response as well. You're going to document your procedures, and that includes manual procedures. Manual procedures that keep things working are legit. It does not have to be duplicating your technology. Good enough is good enough. Plan communications, so who needs to be informed, who needs to know what to do, who needs, and what those actions are. Test your plan, keep the plan current, and align with any external vendor. And I'm going to add vendor requirements too. We are starting to see more of those. So people buying for you may be asking to see this. So Franca, to answer your question, how long does it take to put together? Not too bad. You can get started with this stuff and identify those issues. I think probably in, let's say you're a a 20-person professional services company, not that many stakeholders, you can probably get through that in a few meetings and at least identify all those critical workflows you need to protect. If you're a larger organization with multiple offices and multiple departments, you're going to need to decompose this in our experience. You're going to actually need to meet with different teams because they're going to have their individual workflows and protected requirements. So when we meet with property manager companies who are on our service, that's meeting with people at headquarters that are doing things like payroll and HR and accounting, but that's also meeting with the community managers at each property that have to worry about those fire alarms and watches. They're different workflows, and that's going to take extra time to account for those different workflows. So like a lot of things, smaller the organization, quicker it is to implement. Larger organization is going to take longer. And usually that's where we're coming in and playing a role too to help organize and herd these cats. Great question. You'll also have on this a nice getting started workflow worksheet that you can use for each workflow that your company needs to protect and help you identify. Frank, I will get back with you about that one. All right. So folks, we are almost out of time. Other questions that folks have? Stop screen share. So I think it doesn't need to be as hard if you're focused on the stuff you know, and that is your people. That is the way you work. So focus on those things, start there, and work backwards to the technology. You'll find your answers. All right. And I think Sonia, next month we're going to be doing kind of building on this a little bit, looking at cyber insurance requirements and what people are wanting to see there from the insurance side. And so how you can make sure you're getting a good rate on your cyber insurance and you're able to qualify for the top tier insurance providers.
Yeah, and that will be, we will have a virtual link, but we are doing a lunch and learn actually for that where it will be in office. So
Yeah.
you guys
We'd
can
love to
attend
have you
in
come by.
person. Yep.
Yeah.
Lunch will be provided and
Yeah.
we'll have our partner with their also speaking to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'd love to see you
Well,
there.
and I'm really pretty sure by that point the pond's gonna
I mean,
have
hopefully.
melted.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
But
hopefully.
you'll be able to look
Yeah.
at the pond. So we would love to have you come by and we'll be sending out information on the date very shortly on that.
Well, thanks guys, and we'll send out an
Thanks,
email
everybody.
with a link to the worksheet so that you have that.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Take
bye
care.
guys.